of the Department of Economics and Ecosos. Here today we have with us Ilaria Mariotti. Ilaria is Associate Professor of Applied Economics at Politecnico di Milano in Italy. She has a Master in Regional Science, in Reading, a PhD in Transport Economics, and a PhD, second PhD in Economic Geography. Initially, research interests of Ilaria Mariotti were mainly about firms' relocation decisions, but then she has extended this topic, including many other similar areas like logistics, like FDI, like transport, like clusters, like agglomeration, and very recently, she has added as well co-working spaces, which is a very nowadays popular research topic. And about this topic, she is also responsible of several research projects, including one cost action about co-working in the activities in the peripheral areas in Europe. So Ilaria, thank you very much for accepting our invitation. It's a pleasure for me and for us. The floor is yours. You have more or less half an hour and then some time for some questions and comments.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for having invited me, and thank you, Jose Maria Arauzo. We met quite some time ago in Reading. I mean, more than 20 years ago in Reading when I was doing my master, and you were there for a research period. So I'm happy to see you. I would have preferred to be in Reus with all of you, because Reus is a nice town. I've been, I think, twice there, and I've been preferred to be there with you to visit the museum of Gaudí, because not so many people know that Gaudí was born in Reus and not in Barcelona. But here we are struggling in this COVID-19 pandemic. And I will talk about this to you today. So about the exodus from the city during the COVID-19 pandemic. Is this a short-term trend, medium-term trend, or long-term trend? I will tell you about the research I'm doing with my research group at Politecnico di Milano, Department of Architecture and Urban Studies, but also with other research groups, as Jose said. Why? Because I'm chair of this cost section, the geography of new working spaces and the impact on the periphery, where Jose Maria with Rovira Virgili is also partner for Spain. This cost section, if you are interested, is an open project where people can apply, because the aim of the cost section is to fund networking, to building networking and collaboration. So please have a look to the website, and if you would like, you can join our research. Then I'm recently been involved in this Coral ITN Marie Curie as a partner for Politecnico Milan on a similar topic of new working spaces in peripheral areas. And then today I will talk to you about the research on remote working and teleworking during the COVID pandemic, and with a focus on Milan and Lombardy region, for which I got a grant from the Regional Studies Association, a grant scheme response to COVID-19, together with Dante Di Matteo. The cost action, as I said, if you wanted to have a look to the website, includes more than 30 countries in Europe and elsewhere. So if you are interested, have a look. So the presentation, the seminar today, will focus on, first of all, on the studies on the effects of COVID-19 pandemic, and specifically on the rise of teleworking, on the economic sectors and jobs that have been eaten and the one that could keep on working remotely. the issue about the exodus from the city and the attractiveness of suburban and peripheral areas. And then I will make a focus on Italy, specifically Milan, and then I will say something about the US, just to have an idea that things are not the same in everywhere. So there is a geographical the differentiation according to the places we are talking about. Then I will go to the talking about the renewed role of new working spaces like co-working spaces to accommodate teleworkers, and the near working concept that is also related to the policies enhancing near working, like the 15-minute city. And I will tell you about the case of Milan, and then conclusion and further research. So we start in the early 80s when technological improvements mean that geography and distance have become of little or no importance. So we have Gaspar and Glaser at the end of 1990, Worf in the middle. Why researchers were talking about this, that distance and the geography were of little or no importance, because there has been the urban-rural shift. So an increasing number of people, investment appear to be moving away from major cities into smaller cities. Then we have in 1997 the book by Francis Cairncross, The Death of Distance, and then the book, the well-known book, The World is Flat by Thomas Friedman. Thomas Friedman that stated that we increasingly observe greater similarity and greater homogeneity between people in different parts of the world. The transaction costs have fallen rapidly. But in 2000, other researchers, and here I cite some of them, of course, the literature is huge, said that that was not true, that the world was not flat, the world was curved or spiky. In 2008, a special issue of the Cambridge Journal of Regions, Economy and Society underlined this, that the world was curved. Specifically, Philip McCann, in his paper Globalization and Economic Geography, The World is Curved, Not Flat, underlined and stressed that spatial transaction costs have not fallen over recent years, but instead they have changed. Much of the information will originally have emerged from knowledge of non-standardized tacit nature, and the acquisition and transmission of this type of information increasingly require greater level of face-to-face contact in order to maintain mutual trust and understanding. Besides, high value-added outputs are only produced in a limited number of locations, so where the spikes are, and then sold all over the world, while the low value-added outputs can be produced all over the world. Similarly, Andrés Rodriguez Pose and Riccardo Crescenzi underlined that proximity still matters for the location of economic activity. And in 2011, we remember the book by Edward Glaser about the triumph of the city. So, we can start from this statement that it is highly unlikely that COVID-19 will derail the long-standing process of urbanization and the economic role of cities. Why? Because innovation, creativity, and economic growth of talent and economic assets, face-to-face interaction, buzz, diversity, and the critical mass that only cities can provide. Specifically, knowledge-intensive activities require frequency of face-to-face interaction because time, opportunity, costs associated with not having continuous face-to-face contact have increased with the quantity, variety, and complexity of the information produced. Therefore, paradoxically, the more efficient transportation, telecommunication technologies become in spreading now certain kinds of routine interaction, the more we invent creative, new cutting-edge interaction that demand face-to-face interaction, face-to-face contacts. So, what has happened with the COVID-19 pandemic on the city? Recent work by Richard Florida, Andres Rodriguez Pose, and Michael Storper found that the four forces had an impact. The social scaring, that is the fear instilled by the pandemic, which will have an effect on everything. The residence choice, travel and commute patterns, the economic viability of certain kinds of businesses and social gathering, and also will impact on what we call retail apocalypse because of the online shopping. Then the lockdown is first experiment for employment, so working online, teaching online, shopping online, workplace and residential choice, the commuting and the fear of taking local public transport. So these changes will leave a legacy on how we interact, work, shop, and live. The third force is the need to secure the urban built environment against these and future health and the climate risks. So all the sanification, all the importance of social distancing, physical distancing, and the changes in the urban form and system in order to maintain social distance for indoor and outdoor spaces. Specifically, I will focus in this presentation on teleworking and new working spaces. Why? Because the COVID-19 pandemic has affected office space from one side, spaces, the need to guarantee social distancing, and office spaces and the managers, the companies are demanding for hybrid spaces and are developing geographically dispersed hubs. Why? Because their quarter cannot accommodate all people, and nowadays the company, the work has to be closer to the workers, not the other way around. Why? Because of the fear of traveling, of staying, of physical proximity. The focus on the geography of work, because as we said, as we will see, telework increased massively, and knowledge workers are the ones that can work from home. So there is a move, we are experiencing a move towards suburban and peripheral areas. Although these changes will probably not stay for long. And there are in some areas, in some countries, also real estate price changes. A little reduction in the central city and a higher and an increase in the suburban areas because of a higher demand. Then there is a renewed interest for new working spaces, what are called the third spaces, because the first space is the home, the second space is the office, the third spaces, like co-working spaces, to host these remote workers, these teleworkers. Therefore, allowing them to reduce commuting, hopefully improve work-life balance with positive effects on well-being and sustainability, like traffic, for instance, congestion and pollution. This graph is from Eurofund and shows the percentage of workers doing telework and ICT-based mobile work. This was before the pandemic, 2015. We can see Italy, that is now at the bottom, together with Greece, Portugal, while on the top we see Northern European countries, Denmark, where the employees, 36% of the employees were doing telework. Sweden, Netherlands, Luxembourg, and so on. Let's see where is Spain. Spain is 11%, much better than Italy. Before the COVID pandemic, so for instance, workers from the Netherlands were working daily from home between 17%, while 30% either daily or several times a week. Italy, again, we see, of course, is on the, as before, on the bottom. The teleworking is very much related with firm size and knowledge-intensive business services. Okay, so the share of employment, higher is the size of the firm, higher is the probability that the employees will telework. And this is very much related also with the industrial structure of employment and telework, so to the sector. For instance, here we see the percentage employment in knowledge and ICT intensive sector. So higher is the specialization in knowledge, and higher the knowledge workers are more willing and are more able to telework. If we look at this figure about this figure shows data during the COVID-19 pandemic, we can see that even Italy, that gained some positions. So more people, more workers have started to work from home as a result of the COVID-19. So we still have Northern Europe, but we see also Southern European countries that gained positions. A recent report by coworker.com says that 53% of workers that for the first time worked from home during the pandemic declared they prefer remote working. And generally we read reports, research about people, workers in favor of remote working and teleworking. Therefore, there are some differences. It depends where you work. It depends the situation, the business, the working environment. And then I will tell you more about this. These are some graphs, some figures developed by INAP in Italy, but something similar has been developed also by Eurofund about the effects of the COVID pandemic on economic sector. So, of course, depending on the economic sector, we can have a larger share of teleworking. So we can have a higher share of teleworking for knowledge intensive people, less for the services that need physical proximity, bar, restaurants, but also health services and so on. And so also hotel, restaurant, trade, education, and so on. Working from home post-COVID. Where should we work after the pandemic? What we see is that looking at the data about during the pandemic, city and suburbs people living in city and suburbs started working from home with a higher percentage, and then differences are related to the composition of the family, whether you have children or not, and of course higher, as we said, about the tertiary sectors are more willing, more able to work from home. This is a map about Italy based on Facebook data on Facebook users by province. Looking at this map that shows the average change of the presence of Facebook users in March 2020 compared to the year before the pandemic, we see that we can see an exodus from large cities. You can see Milan, you can see Bologna, Florence, Rome, and so on. What has happened in Milan? In Milan, we used other data that are the team mobile data in order to see whether there was a change, no, in the presence of people in the city of Milan. This map shows the difference in percentage of the monthly average hour of people presence in April 2020 compared to April 2019 by neighborhoods. So you can see with the purple color that there has been an exodus from central neighborhoods. So the central neighborhoods, so the Duomo, if you know Milan, so the Cerchia dei Navigli till the new kind of development area that is Garibaldi Repubblica and so on, they lost from 63% to 47% of city users. But where are these people now? Where are they working and living? Are they working suburban and peripheral areas? This graph shows the flows towards Milan before and during the pandemic. So as you can see, the first, the blue line shows the presence of city users, before the pandemic, April 2019. So you can see that starting from 8 till 20, there has been a huge presence, a massive presence of people in the city of Milan. This has been massively reduced, if you see the orange line, so in the lockdown phase, so people were coming to entering the city just to work and then were probably going back home, while in October 2021 we had a presence, a less evident, less massive presence in the city. But where do these people live and work? So this is the first. These are some first results. Now we are developing, improving the analysis, looking at all the municipalities where these workers, these city users were originating. But here I show you the first 30 municipalities where the flows towards Milan depart. So you can see that there is the municipalities where people live and work are in the suburban area of Milan specifically, but also in cities like Pavia in the south, but also in cities like, for instance, Turin and Bologna. Turin and Bologna, why? Because there is, for instance, the high-speed train. So people can live, for instance, in Turin, that is cheaper, and work in Milan. The same holds for Bologna. So the map on the left side shows before the COVID pandemic, where people, the origin of the flows towards Milan, and the map on the right side shows during the pandemic in October last year, we can see that less people were moving to the city, and so were mainly staying in their home. What's happened in the US? In the US, there are several studies showing a bit different phenomena. For instance, the San Francisco Bay Area, New York saw a dramatic shift. So the more movement towards the outside these areas. So COVID, urban areas, particularly urban areas, lost residents, while suburban areas gained them. In most urban areas, more people moved out than in. The opposite was true in suburban ones. But we know that the situation and also the labor market is different in the US, and in the US there have been also cases of relocation of people changing their place, their residence. So the new normal trend, working from everywhere. Why we say this? Because several firms, specifically the big tech companies like Twitter, Google, Airbnb, and so on, announced that their workers will work remotely. Where can we work? At home? It depends. I have 2 children. It's not so easy. Today, fortunately, I could come working in the office. Where? In hybrid spaces, co-working spaces, or everywhere, sharing flats, bed and breakfasts that are transforming themselves into offices, hotels, and so on. Where to work? So it is estimated that 1/5 of the European employees will continue teleworking post-pandemic. But the home is not the best place where to work, and I will tell you more why. And companies are changing their business model, allowing employees to work from home part-time, to work from home 4 days a week, and investing in flexible and hybrid spaces to be closer to their employees. So what are they doing? They are opening geographically dispersed hubs. As I said, the model is changing. What happens is that companies are trying to open hubs that can be more closer to the home of their workers. In this context, new working spaces can be considered a good alternative for teleworkers, and the cities are proposing plans to reduce mobility. And we refer to the 15-minute city that shows a renewed role, emphasizes a renewed role of the neighborhoods and near working. Why working from home is not so good? No? First of all, on the left side here we have a graph about teleworking in Italy, and there is a mistake here, teleworking. So in 2019 we had 570,000 people teleworking, and these became more than 6 million, and in September 2020 about 5 million. Okay, so main criticalities underlined by the firm and their workers: problems related to technology, poor digital competencies of people, and also problems related to work-life balance. Also here, the problem of feeling of loneliness and work-life balance, and also the the feeling to be always connected. So where should we work? We should work in third places, like co-working spaces. Here we have this on the left side, this figure about the definition of new working spaces done by the developed by the cost section. Within new working spaces, co-working spaces increased very much at the beginning, from the middle of 2000 up to now. I try to go fast because I'm a bit late. So, which is the future for big cities? Cities are developing strategies because they saw that they lost city users, they lost workers, they lost tourists, they lost many people, okay? So the 15-minute city was now popularized by Anne Hidalgo, the mayor of Paris. That was inspired by Carlos Moreno, but this policy is a policy that has always been, no, has always been developed in different time, in different places. Like, for instance, in the Netherlands, the integrated service areas were based on let's say, suggesting that in order to improve the well-being of people, especially older, elderly, was important to find in a buffer of 500 meters all the main services useful to live. So shopping, leisure, but health services, and so on. So also Milan, in the Strategia di Adattamento document, underlined the importance of teleworking and the reorganization of the timetable for several activities, the importance of the neighborhood dimension, and the importance of teleworking as ordinary systems that can be carried out at home or in third places, and of course the key role of sustainable mobility. We developed a study for the city of Milan about the co-working spaces in Milan, and we tried to understand whether these co-working spaces that increased in number since from 2014 up to now, where these co-working spaces were accessible by foot or by bike. So to understand whether in the city there was of third spaces, of co-working spaces that could be related to this 15-minute city policy. And as we can see in these maps, on the left side there is the pedestrian accessibility, on the right side bike accessibility. So by bike you can reach co-working spaces easily from all the neighborhood of the city. By foot, the most peripheral neighborhoods are lacking these spaces. Similarly to the 15 minutes city, similarly the city of London is wants to encourage small businesses to re-enter the city center, and what is interesting is that is recommending these flexible working season tickets for rail travel. Why? Because we know that will probably not come back to work in the office 5 days a week. Therefore, we need flexible tickets, for instance, to enter the city. Okay, so I can conclude here saying that agglomeration economies will be still important. Spatial proximity matters, and if we remember the paper by Ron Boschma, spatial proximity is also related to social proximity, to institutional proximity, cognitive proximity, and so on, and that improve the well-being and performance. And cities are great places to work. There is no substitute to face-to-face contacts. What Philip McCann is saying, because yes, I have interviewed Philip McCann recently for a book chapter I'm writing for an ebook, the first ebook of the series of the Italian Regional Science Association, ISRE. What Philip is saying is that in New Zealand, Australia, Taiwan, and Israel, people went back into the city. So there is no substitute to face-to-face contacts. There will be a reorganization of the ownership of real estate and the occupancy. Teleworking will continue, and there will be changes in the design and redesign of urban facilities. So a shift toward hybrid spaces, like co-working spaces, but also a shift within the city, within the company itself. The headquarter companies are rethinking the headquarter. The headquarter, their offices will not be able to accommodate all the employees anymore, and will be redesigned to host meeting rooms. So we'll have a different function. Higher income groups are more easily adapting to working online and to more flexible working. Let's remember now about the relationship between the sector specialization, the typology of the sector, and the capacity, opportunity to to work remotely. So there will be here a big difference between higher income groups and lower income groups. But so we can see that COVID-19 can be seen as an opportunity to reorganize working life, to build on the advantage of more widespread teleworking. And then I conclude with this research, with these questions that I posed to Philip McCann, as I said, in this book edited by Marco Bellandi, Rosanna Nisticò, and myself, of the Italian Regional Science Association. So what will be a real estate, will there be a real estate decrease in the city center? Will new businesses enter the city? So the businesses that were not able before to enter the city, now will they have the opportunity because of real estate price decrease? I'm finishing.
Una persona autònoma, però tenir un model de negoci amb un alt impacte social i transformador, doncs també tindria perquè el que volem és emplear.
Will there be a shift from sectoral to functional urban specialization? And as Duranton and Puga said in 2005 in their paper, will there be opportunities for young people to enter in the city because they kind of are more courageous than older people, and because they want to go back to the city? What about the retail apocalypse? So about these policies probably should be needed to retain the local shops that have a very, very important social role. Will most of people commute to the city not more than 2-3 times a week? And what about the effects on suburban peripheral areas? And what about the new rise of discontent in places that will become more fragile? So I finish with this very, very interesting sentence of Philip McCann saying, less frequent commuting will allow for larger hinterland areas, and this will tend to favor most prosperous city. And my guess is that you will have a sort of a shadow effect on weaker cities. Cities that are more economically weaker will become more vulnerable. Okay, thank you very much. Sorry I took more time. Thank you very much. If you want to see our cost action, here are some webinars that we organize. These are the web references. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Ilaria, for this very appealing presentation. I really look forward to read your interview to Philip McCann. So let me open the floor for comments, discussions, questions. In the meanwhile, I have one because, well, we have been talking about all these changes, unexpected changes as a consequence of COVID-19. According to current situation and according to all these changes, I think that we may consider that agglomeration economies have been weakened. Weakened because of the lack of social distance, because of social distance and because of the lack of face-to-face interaction, especially during lockdown, but not only there, because as you have explained, social habits have changed a lot. And then my point is that how this could affect or will affect or is affecting first productivity. As we have, let's say, a different type of interactions, and we know that agglomeration economies arise from these close interactions among individuals, then not having the same level of proximity. What about the effect of that over productivity, not over certain type of firms that really they do require these knowledge flows among people?
Yes. No, I completely agree. As I said, not all, as I said, as the literature says, no, not all the sectors, not all the typologies of products need now these high knowledge intensive skilled workers. But as also Philip McCann said, these highly knowledge intensive activities need face-to-face contacts, and so they will need to meet once in a while. They will need to gather. Innovation comes from kind of complex working typologies. So if you don't know each other, you need, it's more difficult to work online, to work via Zoom, to work via Teams. This is what we are experiencing. So you can do that if you know the person. So this is not easy, because companies have new customers, have new suppliers. So for specific activities, the face-to-face contacts are important. And this might, and if this is not possible, if this is less frequent, this might have a negative impact on the productivity. Yes. There are some studies on the productivity of people during the pandemic, and there are different results, I have to say, no? Because in a way, working from home allowed some people to be, for instance, reduce commuting, that is time-consuming and rather stressful. Then in this sense, you can gain from well-being, and therefore you can be more productive, but still we are social people, and in some in some jobs, as the ones we know, for instance, we need to gather, we need to exchange ideas, knowledge spillover, and so on and so forth. So I think that there will be studies, and we might make comparative studies looking at what has happened during the COVID-19 and what compared to what was happening before and afterwards. What I think is that the COVID-19, as I wrote, allowed countries like Italy, for instance, to reach this point of teleworking, of online teaching much faster. So this is positive, no? I want to be positive. The only thing is that we have to understand, we have to learn how to manage this in order to avoid the negative effects. I'm myself as the first one, that is, I'm working much longer time than before.
You're right. Thank you. There is a question by Ferran Mañé. Ferran, please.
Hi. Well, it was an excellent presentation. Congratulations. It was very interesting. And with all this support with the graphics and tables, it was very easy to follow. So excellent. Thank you very much. Well, actually, it's kind of a follow-up question of José Maria's, because my initial question was that there is a recent report by the OCDE showing that around 80–85% of the accumulation of human capital is done informally within firms. So you learn from your colleagues and co-workers. And obviously, that is lost when you don't work close to them. So in terms of learning, so and therefore in terms of human capital accumulation, considering that as this report claims, most of it is done informally through personal contacts, working, this learning by doing. How my initial question was to ask you about your opinion on this and how that could affect the competitiveness of firms and some countries. However, you already more or less answered, but well, it's not disagree, but I think you focus on José Maria's questions, but you focus on the relation between firms, not within firms. What I mean is that these agglomeration economies mostly are done by interactions between firms, and firms is people. Firms is not something kind of non-real thing. So firms are actually people within there. That's okay. But at the same time, collaboration between firms is done not only through people, it's also through products, hiring services. So there are different forms which are not that dependent on these face-to-face contacts. However, learning at the workplace is basically done, through personal interactions, which will affect much heavier, to this process of learning. So I don't know if, considering my comments, you would be willing to adjust a little bit your previous comments on the agglomeration. So let's say there are agglomeration economies between firms, but there are also agglomeration economies within firms that are much more personally dependent. Yeah. So that's, I think that your positive comments on teleworking, well, I understood that you were kind of considering that was a positive thing, mainly in terms of reorganization of cities and also in terms of health and pollution and so on. But considering that, again, and I'm finished. Considering that the learning processes are heavily dependent on this, what will be your point? Could you change your positive view of this?
Yes, no. I'm probably I was not clear enough. I mean, what is important now is important the face-to-face contact, like we said, is important also because and the solutions have been found by the companies themselves. So the idea of having this ecosystem of hubs closer to where the workers live. No, so the idea is that you can't have a big premises in the city center, but now you need hubs, offices geographically dispersed in order to be closer to the employees. This is what companies are doing in Italy, in Milan, for instance. Why? Because it's important, the contact of people, and in this sense, the third places like new working spaces can be an alternative, because can be a place where to work and where I didn't have the time, but to say that where teleworkers are going. I didn't say that, for instance, within the 15-minute city policy, the City Council of Milan is organizing third places, working spaces in the city and outside the city to accommodate the teleworkers, no? Just because people need to interact, needs to stay together also for productivity, but also for their well-being. And then there is also the issue of work-life balance. So we should, working from home doesn't guarantee the work-life balance, especially if you have children. These third places can also, and sometimes they do, offer facilities for like babysitting, this kind of stuff. So the first co-working spaces that were developed in Prague were developed with this idea of enhancing, helping women to enter the labor market, no, with these facilities. So. No, I completely agree about the importance of proximity, geographical proximity, social proximity, and so on. There is a new paper by Ron Boschma about this, the role of social proximity, the new role of social proximity nowadays, no? That we work. And then I saw it, but I didn't read with attention. So no, I agree. I completely agree. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. We have time for just a very short answer to a final comment by Eva. Eva, in fact, has very short questions in the chat. The first one is about whether this current context can favor the development of rural areas. And then the second short question is whether you have found some profession-specific specificities in terms of this changing commuting patterns due to COVID, whether, for instance, creative people commute less or more to the city center than the rest of people.
Okay. Hi, Eva. Eva is also part of our cost action. Okay, so the first question, we notice an increase in co-working space in other Italian cities in more rural areas. Yes, I mean, this started even before the COVID-19 pandemic all over the world, and in Italy, yes, we are experiencing a kind of increase. Also, a sort of increase also due to some public initiatives of public municipalities, for instance, opening co-working spaces in like public libraries, like is happening it has happened since 10 years in, for instance, Norway and Finland, no? So either public co-working spaces or and private. Similarly in Catalonia, no? You have, but this started even before the pandemic. Now there is a renewed interest. Your study, have you been able to see difference between the different professions in terms of decision to work? Yes. Yes, we will explore this. Of course, creative will privilege the city and will probably be the first to go back to the city. To work in the city or commute due to the COVID. Yes, will be as the literature now says that they will be probably, they need to be in the city and they will probably be the first to go back to the city. Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you everybody for attending, and especially you, Ilaria, for presenting this very appealing and very up-to-date talk. And see all of you again in our next seminar session. Again, Ilaria, thank you very much. You were here, but as you know, now we have to adapt to this remote working scenario.
I will come, and you have to come to Milan, of course.
I take your word. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Reus will be more safe than a big city like Milan, so.
Yeah, it's quite safe right now. It's quite safe.
Good.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.